It was supposed to be a normal Sunday at my parents' house in Accra, full of food, laughter, and family stories. But peace never lasts long when my sister Amma is around. She leaned back in her chair, her hand resting on her big pregnant belly, and looked straight at me with a sneer. "Your boy is fatherless. No man wanted you," she said loudly enough for everyone to hear. The room went silent. My father cleared his throat, my mother dropped her spoon, and all eyes turned to me and my son, little Kweku. My chest tightened, but before I could even reply, I caught a quick flicker in Kwame's eyes, Amma's husband. It was guilt, pure and sharp, before he quickly forced a smile to hide it. This wasn't the first time Amma mocked me for raising Kweku alone. She always paraded her perfect marriage like a crown, reminding me of what I didn't have. What she didn't know was that Kweku had already seen through their lies. My son was only 10, but he was sharp, always listening, always watching. One night, when Amma and Kwame thought no one was near, Kweku overheard a phone call. A voice note. A slip of truth that Kwame had been hiding. He came to me trembling, holding his old tablet. "Mama," he whispered, "Uncle Kwame is lying to Auntie Amma." He showed me recordings, screenshots, messages Kwame left open. My heart stopped. The proof was there. I begged him to keep quiet, but Kweku's eyes burned with a courage I didn't expect. He wasn't going to stay silent forever. Amma had made it her mission to remind me of my struggles every chance she got. At every family gathering, she found a way to mock me for being a single mother. She would tilt her head, smile sweetly in front of everyone, and say things like, "It must be hard doing everything alone," or, "Kweku will never know what a real father looks like." The words cut deep, but I forced myself to stay calm. I told myself I was stronger than her cruel games. She carried herself like a queen, proud of her marriage to Kwame, acting as though she had everything I lacked. To her, my life was a story of shame. But to my son, it was a story of survival. What Amma didn't realize was that Kweku wasn't the little boy she thought he was. He was only 10, but he had the eyes and ears of someone much older. He noticed the way Kwame's phone never left his side. He noticed the nervous smile that always appeared whenever Amma bragged too loudly about her perfect husband. And one evening, when they thought no one was around, Kweku's sharp ears caught something he was never meant to hear. He was lying on the couch with his old tablet when Amma stepped outside to take a call. Kwame stayed inside, speaking softly on his phone, thinking no one was near. But Kweku heard every word. It wasn't just a casual chat. It was a voice note, hushed whispers full of secrets. "Don't worry," Kwame said, his voice low and shaky. "I'll take care of you and the baby. Amma doesn't need to know." The words froze Kweku in place. His small hands tightened around the tablet. He didn't understand everything, but he understood enough. Uncle Kwame was hiding something big, something that would break Auntie Amma's heart and expose the lies she loved to parade in front of everyone. Later that night, Kweku came to me, his face pale, his little body trembling. "Mama," he whispered, "I think Uncle Kwame is lying to Auntie Amma." He clutched his tablet like it was a shield, his eyes wide with fear and determination. I pulled him close, trying to calm him, but then he showed me what he had saved. Recordings. Screenshots. Messages Kwame had carelessly left open, proof of late-night conversations that were never meant for my sister's ears. My breath caught in my throat. My hands shook as I scrolled through the evidence. It was all there, dates, times, words no husband should ever be saying. I begged Kweku not to say a word. I told him this was too heavy for a child, that we needed to be careful. But he looked at me with a fire I had never seen before. His voice was soft, but unshakable. "Mama, the truth has to come out." In that moment, I realized my little boy was braver than most grown men I knew. Kweku came to me one night, his small hands shaking as he clutched the old tablet he always used for school. His eyes were wide, his lips trembling, and when he spoke, his voice was soft but heavy, like he was carrying a burden too big for a child. "Mama," he whispered, "I think Uncle Kwame is lying to Auntie Amma." My heart skipped a beat. I reached for the tablet, but Kweku held it close to his chest first, as if afraid of what it carried. Then slowly, he handed it to me, his face pale with fear. On the screen were recordings, screenshots, messages that Kwame had foolishly left open. At first, I thought maybe Kweku misunderstood, maybe it wasn't what it looked like. But as I read the words and listened to the hushed voice notes, my hands started to shake. The truth was there in black and white. Kwame wasn't only unfaithful, he was hiding something far worse. There was talk of another woman, another baby, and promises that Amma didn't need to know. My breath caught in my throat. It felt like the air had been stolen from the room. I looked at Kweku, my sweet 10-year-old boy, and I could see the fear in his eyes, but also a fire I didn't expect. He knew exactly what all of this meant. He had pieced it together himself, and he was ready to act. I pulled him close, my arms wrapping tightly around him. "You must not say a word," I begged. "This is dangerous. This is not for you to handle." But he pulled back slightly, shaking his head with surprising determination. "Mama," he said, his voice firmer now, "Auntie keeps laughing at me. She keeps saying I don't have a father. But Uncle Kwame is lying to her. She thinks her life is perfect, but it's not. She should know the truth." His little fists clenched at his sides, and in that moment, I realized my son wasn't thinking of himself. He wasn't even thinking about revenge for the cruel words Amma had thrown at us. He was thinking about justice, about truth, about protecting his family even when it meant standing against adults. I tried to convince him that silence was better, that exposing Kwame could destroy everything, but Kweku's eyes stayed locked on mine. There was no fear there anymore, only resolve. "Mama," he whispered again, "the truth has to come out. Even if they hate me for it, even if they don't believe me, I can't let her keep laughing while he lies." Tears filled my eyes as I realized my little boy was braver than most grown men I had ever known. He wasn't just defending himself, he was defending me, too. I thought I was raising him, but in that moment, I knew he was the one holding me up. And deep down, I also knew something I didn't want to admit: Kweku had already made up his mind. The next family gathering was supposed to be like any other. My mother cooked a big meal, my father sat in his favorite chair ready to tell old stories, and cousins ran around the compound laughing. But once again, Amma couldn't resist. She sat at the table, heavily pregnant, her hand rubbing her swollen belly like a trophy. With a sly smile, she looked straight at me and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "At least my child will have a father. Not like yours." The words landed like a slap across my face. The whole room froze. My father shifted in his chair, clearly uncomfortable. My mother reached across the table, her voice trembling as she begged, "Amma, please stop." But Amma only leaned back, enjoying every second of my humiliation. She had always thrived on making me feel small, but that day, she went further than ever. I looked down at my plate, trying to hold back the sting in my eyes, but before I could gather my thoughts, I saw Kwame. He sat beside her, his jaw clenched so tightly a vein pulsed at his temple. His eyes refused to meet mine. Instead, they darted nervously toward Kweku, who sat quietly at my side. In that silent exchange, I knew the truth was eating him alive. He knew his mask was slipping. He knew my son held the secret that could destroy him. Kweku sat still, but I could feel the storm building inside him. His small hands gripped the edge of the chair, his knuckles white. He had been patient, he had held on to the truth longer than I ever thought possible. But Amma's words, sharp and cruel, were like sparks thrown on dry grass. I could see it in his eyes, he was done being silent. Amma laughed again, patting her belly as if the baby inside was her shield of pride. "Some of us are blessed," she added with a smirk, "others just take what life throws at them." The air in the room grew heavy. No one moved. My father sighed deeply, my mother wiped her tears, but Amma's voice rose above it all, sharp and cruel. And then, almost without meaning to, my gaze locked with Kweku's. His young eyes were steady, burning with something far stronger than anger. It was truth. It was courage. I shook my head slightly, silently pleading with him not to do what I feared he would. But it was too late. Kwame shifted uncomfortably in his chair, sweat beading on his forehead, and for the first time, Amma seemed confused by his unease. She kept smirking, but she didn't notice the way her husband's eyes flickered with panic every time Kweku moved. The room was seconds away from breaking apart. Amma thought she had won. She thought she had crushed me once again. But what she didn't know was that the fatherless boy she mocked was about to open his mouth, and with just a few words, her perfect world would collapse. The words had barely left Amma's mouth when it happened. My 10-year-old son, who had been sitting quietly at my side all evening, suddenly pushed back his chair and stood up. His small frame looked so fragile, yet his voice came out steady, sharp, and clear. It cut right through Amma's loud laughter. "Auntie," he said, his eyes locked on hers, "you shouldn't laugh at me, because Uncle Kwame isn't even the father of your baby." The room froze. For a moment, no one even breathed. Alma's fork slipped from her fingers and clattered against her plate, the sound echoing in the silence. My mother gasped, covering her mouth with both hands. My father's face turned red with anger as he barked, "Kweku, stop this nonsense." But my son didn't flinch. He stood taller, as if years older than his age, and pulled out his old tablet from under the table. "Auntie," he whispered, "you think you know everything. But you don't." Then, with one firm tap, he pressed play. The room filled with a voice everyone recognized. Kwame's voice. Clear as day, trembling yet tender, speaking words that made Alma's entire body stiffen. "I'll take care of you and the baby. Alma doesn't need to know." The message repeated, and the more it played, the more Kwame's face twisted in panic. Alma's hands flew to her belly as if to shield herself from the truth. Her eyes darted between her husband and the boy she had mocked countless times. This is a lie," she shouted, her voice breaking. But the evidence kept playing. The timestamps, the messages, the hushed promises, they were all real. Kwame lunged forward, trying to snatch the tablet from Kweku's hands, but my son stepped back quickly, holding it close to his chest. "You can't hide anymore, uncle," he said, his small voice shaking but still firm. "You lied to everyone. You lied to Auntie." The silence that followed was heavier than thunder. My mother broke down into tears, her shoulders shaking as she cried. My father turned toward Kwame, his eyes burning with fury. "Is this true?" he demanded, his voice booming. "Answer me, Kwame." Kwame stuttered, sweat dripping down his forehead. It's not what it sounds like," he mumbled, but no one believed him. The truth had already shattered the picture he and Alma had painted for years. The perfect marriage. The proud smiles. The endless mocking of me and my son. It all came crashing down with one recording. Alma's face crumpled. She turned on her husband, her voice trembling with rage. "You told me I was everything to you. And all this time you were lying." Her words dissolved into sobs, her pride crumbling in front of everyone. And through it all, Kweku stood tall, his chin lifted. The boy she had called fatherless had just destroyed the lie she built her world on. The truth was out, and there was no taking it back. Alma's face went pale, so pale that even the glow of her pregnancy could not hide the fear spreading across her features. She pressed both hands to her swollen belly as though the child inside could shield her from the storm crashing around her. Her lips trembled, her eyes wide with disbelief. "No, this can't be true," she whispered, but her voice carried no strength. It sounded like a prayer that had already gone unanswered. Kwame jumped up from his chair, his hand reaching across the table to grab the tablet from Kweku. His voice rose in anger, desperate and shaky. "This is fake. Don't believe this nonsense. He's just a child. He doesn't know what he's talking about." But the proof glowed on the screen. The voice notes, the screenshots, the timestamps lined up like daggers pointed straight at him. His denial only made the truth louder. My son stood his ground, clutching the tablet to his chest with a firmness that shocked everyone. His small body trembled, but his eyes never left Kwame's. "You can't lie anymore," Kweku said softly, but the words carried the weight of thunder. The whole family sat frozen. The air was heavy, thick with betrayal, silence broken only by the faint sound of the recording still echoing in the room. My father stared at Kwame with eyes filled with fury and disappointment. His fists clenched on the table as he shouted, "How dare you bring this shame into my house? How dare you lie to all of us?" My mother wept openly, rocking back and forth in her chair, unable to bear the sight of her family tearing apart. Alma turned on her husband, her face twisted in disbelief. "Kwame," she cried, her voice breaking, "tell me this isn't true. Tell me he's lying. Tell me you didn't betray me like this." But Kwame had no answers. His mouth opened and closed, his excuses falling apart before they even left his lips. He had spent years wearing the mask of a perfect husband, but now that mask had crumbled into dust at his feet. The family watched, stunned, as the life Alma had bragged about shattered in an instant. All her sneers, all her proud words, all her insults thrown at me and my son came back like a cruel mirror reflecting her own pain. She had mocked me for raising Kweku alone, but now she sat broken, clutching her belly, realizing the man she had trusted was a liar. Kwame tried once more to defend himself, but no one listened. His voice sounded small, drowned out by the undeniable evidence. My son's courage had dragged the truth into the light, and there was no way to hide it again. In that moment, I didn't need to say a single word. The silence spoke for me. The perfect marriage they had paraded was nothing but smoke, and now everyone could see through it. And it was my little boy, the one they had called Fatherless, who had ripped the mask away. The room exploded the moment the truth settled in. My father, a man known for his calm nature and gentle tone, slammed his hand against the table so hard that every plate rattled. His eyes blazed with fury as he pointed straight at Kwame. "You will explain this right now," he thundered. "How could you bring this shame into my house? How could you betray your wife and lie to this family?" The anger in his voice shook everyone. My father had never raised his voice like that before, not to anyone. My mother, unable to hold it together, broke down into uncontrollable tears. She covered her face with her scarf and wept, rocking back and forth in her chair. Between sobs, she kept repeating, "Why, Kwame? Why would you do this? You've broken everything." Her cries filled the room, mixing with the echoes of the voice notes still fresh in everyone's mind. But the loudest voice came from Amma. The same sister who had always smirked at me, the same woman who never missed a chance to humiliate me, now turned her rage on the man she once called perfect. Her face twisted, her voice shaking with betrayal. "You liar," she screamed. "You cheater. You fraud." Her hands clutched her belly as she shouted, her voice cracking under the weight of her pain. "All this time, I defended you. All this time, I laughed at my own sister while you were the one living a lie." The irony was sharp and cruel. The words she had once thrown at me now came back to destroy her. She had called my son fatherless, she had mocked me for being alone, but now her so-called perfect marriage was crumbling before everyone's eyes. The family sat stunned, some with pity, some with anger, but no one could deny the truth. It was like the air itself was heavy with shame. Kwame stuttered, reaching out toward Amma, his voice breaking. "Amma, please, it's not what you think. I can explain." But Amma shoved his hand away as though his touch burned her. "Explain?" she cried. "Explain what? That you have another woman? Another baby? That while I carried your child, you were promising another woman the same lies?" Her sobs turned to screams, her voice echoing off the walls. I sat silently, my arm wrapped around Kweku, who leaned into me with quiet strength. I didn't need to say a word. My son had spoken for us both. His courage had cut through all the years of mockery, all the weight of Amma's cruelty, and turned it back on her in the most painful way possible. The once proud Amma now sat broken, shouting and crying, while Kwame stood cornered, exposed, and trembling. My father glared at him with disgust, my mother wept uncontrollably, and the rest of the family watched in stunned silence. The perfect picture Amma had painted of her life had been destroyed by the very boy she mocked. And as I held my son close, I realized something simple but powerful. The fatherless child had just proven he had more strength than all the adults at that table. I didn't need to raise my voice that day. I didn't need to argue or remind Amma of all the cruel things she had said to me. My son's bravery had done everything my silence never could. In just a few minutes, his small but steady voice had spoken louder than anything I could have ever said in my own defense. The boy she called fatherless had turned out to be the one person strong enough to tear down the lie she had built her life on. As I wrapped my arm around Kweku, I could feel his heart still racing against mine, but he stood tall, unshaken. He wasn't just my little boy in that moment. He was my protector, my strength, the proof that love could raise a child stronger than insults or shame. Around us, the room was still heavy with shock. My father sat with his head in his hands, my mother's quiet sobs filled the air, and the rest of the family avoided Amma's eyes. Amma sat frozen, her face pale, her pride burned to ashes. For once, she had no words. She didn't dare look at me, not after everything she had said. Every insult she had thrown at me echoed back now, not from my mouth but from the truth itself. Her silence was louder than her laughter had ever been. Kwame stood in the corner, defeated, his mask gone, his lies exposed. No one moved to comfort him. No one even tried to defend him. And in that silence, I realized I had already won. Not through revenge, not through shouting, but through the courage of my son. The fatherless child had spoken the biggest truth of all, and nothing in that house would ever be the same again.